So we are looking at demystifying nutrition for endurance athletes, raising the question, is it all in the mind? I am Andy Lane and those are not my legs, but that is my new book along with my colleagues Greg White, Rich Godfrey and Mike Loosemore, Case Studies in Sports Science and Medicine, available from Amazon, extremely reasonably priced. So here are some of the key questions. Question 1, how do I get the energy in, the energy out balance correct? And one of the things we'll be looking at is the effect of stress on self-control, which uses energy, which uses glucose. Glucose is needed for performance, and if stress gets out of control, you get emotional exhaustion and burnout. So we'll be looking at a solution for that. We'll be looking at the focus of the cause of stress, and we're going to have taken a solutions focused approach to that. Second question, can psychology give processes to take energy away or give me energy? Well, we've already said that glucose is the fuel of the brain, but do I need more glucose? The answer to that, we would argue, is no. Your brain can get enough glucose from your body and it prioritizes the brain, so I don't see that as an emergency. What we will say is that emotions can provide additional energy. That is what emotions have evolved for over millions of years of human evolution. Emotions have evolved as a fight or flight response, and they've evolved to give you rapid movement. Both fight and flight, running away, running to it, are there to give you movement. How do I get more energy? Well, there are lots and lots of products which you can use. You are marketed to death by various agencies, and deciding on which one is better than the other is exceptionally difficult. We'd need to test each one against each other, test them for you personally. So what I'm going to suggest is that you become your own scientist. You find a product that works for you. You use a method that is reliable and valid, that you can compare products against each other, and you get your own database. Once you've got something that works, the belief that you've got something that works will give you that extra energy as well as the product, and we'll look at why that is the case in a moment. So what we have here is a study that looked at the question, does stress contribute to the workload during endurance exercise? We have data from athletes riding at lactate threshold for 2 hours. Lactate threshold is the point where it feels quite hard, about marathon type pace. And what we have is some of the riders experienced unpleasant emotions and others experienced positive emotions. And what we get from that is that those who experience the unpleasant emotions, things like anxiety, things like excessive fatigue, feeling a bit stressed, not performing to your capabilities, a general sense of uncertainty, there was a greater physical cost. The yellow line is higher than the blue one throughout. It increases quite a lot after 60 minutes to 90 minutes. And whereas the positive emotion groups seem to have energy to increase speed near the end, the unpleasant emotions are trying to hang on. And just think through what that would feel like. It'd feel much better to be pushing through, going faster, going harder near the end. So it would suggest that the simply riding at the same intensity, being in a positive psychological state, does make a difference. So we took that point a bit further and we did it on a study which looked at energy costs during a 10-mile time trial cycle test. And what we did here, we were a bit sneaky in this project, in that we gave them either full feedback or we gave them deceptive feedback. That is, we lied to them. In one of the trials we gave them positive feedback, that is, we looked at how fast they were going and told them they were going 5% faster than they actually were, so they were achieving their goals a little bit quicker. If they're trying to do 25 miles an hour, they got there a little bit quicker. If they were trying to hold 25 miles per hour, they actually got there a little bit slower, even if they achieved that goal. So it's a little bit of deception. The idea about that was we wanted to induce stress. The negative feedback was all about riding through stress when you're behind your goal, when you're trying to get back to a level of performance you'll be happy with, as against being on top of your goal, riding feeling relatively comfortable, and therefore looking like you're going to achieve your targets. So what we get is differences in performance, but not any differences in overall finish time. Of course, the positive feedback group tend to go off a little bit slower, but that's because the negative feedback, being told you're going slower than you'd expect, will increase their speed at the point of that negative feedback. And what happens is that they try to ride much harder, much quicker, try and push hard, and that leads to fatigue in the latter stages. They then try and build that up. But just like the other study, what we see is that the positive group, the positive emotions, put in a big spurt near the end. Now, it might well be that they could have performed much better if they'd have just regulated that performance, so they went a bit quicker from miles 7, 8 and 9 where they had a bit of a dip, but they certainly could push through hard at the end. So in terms of the effects of positive and negative feedback on emotional states, we see that negative feedback links with high anxiety, it links with feeling downhearted, it links with reduced feelings of happiness and not having as much energy. So in it makes sense here that negative feedback is really detrimental to a sense that you've got enough energy to push really hard in a task that demands maximal effort. What we have here is the influence of a little bit of information changing the quality of the experience completely. In terms of the effects on physiological variables, we see little difference in heart rate, so they're both working really hard, steady increase in heart rate as we'd expect, increase in lactate in acid concentration. So the negative feedback, we have a greater amount of lactic acid, and those scores are really, really high. Confidence to manage their emotions, well, that's lower, of course, in the negative feedback, and the effort that requires to manage your emotional states, that is much higher in the negative feedback. So really marked differences between the two conditions. In terms of oxygen uptake, well, we have a greater amount of oxygen used in the negative feedback condition. That is, they seem to be working much harder to produce the same amount of effort. And interestingly, there is more glucose in the bloodstream when the positive feedback condition. The idea that being in a positive state of mind has helped liberate energy, if that is the best way of describing it. So let's look at some of the issues. Negative beliefs that activate unpleasant and unwanted emotions, they use energy, and that's what we've seen in that study, in those two studies where people got themselves into a negative psychological state and it had a physical cost. So what are our strategies to get around that? One is to engage in positive self-talk, to think through the dialogue that will go through your mind when performing and reconstruct that and rewrite that so it's positive, so that your goals are about what you can do, what you can achieve. People are very different in how they phrase their goals. Some people want to achieve personal best times, other people want to beat other people's positions. Well, you need to work out what sort of type of person you are, what your goals you're trying to achieve. My favourite is to have the goals focused about what you can do and have them drive them down to, in endurance sport, to drive them down to keeping a really good rhythm of performance, to think through what you need to deliver performance. So if that's cycling, it's turning your feet over. If it's running, it's being as smooth as possible in your stride and taking efficient, fast strides, and turn that over quickly. So that in cycling, it might be an image of train wheels going round and round and round. In running, it might be images of brilliant runners going round and round and round. There really are lots and lots of different strategies and ways of doing that, but keep them positive. It can be self-talk, it can be imagery, or it could be something called using an if-then plan, where you create a solution to the problem and you present it in an if-then format. If I feel I'll run out of energy, then I will take my rocket fuel. But you'll need your rocket fuel, and we'll look at that in a moment. So how do I get more energy? How do I get more energy? How do I release more energy? One of those issues is the power of beliefs. That seems odd that we're talking about energy and it's all about beliefs. Firstly, Do ergogenic aids work? There are lots and lots of different ergogenic aids, from beetroot juice supplementation to caffeine. I remember when I started doing triathlon in the early 1990s, everyone was taking L-carnitine, and it was available very, very expensively, and those people who got it walked around in a buffed up way as they suddenly believed that their performance would improve greatly. There is evidence to say that ergogenic aids work. There is a biological explanation, that is, there are changes in the cells, in how the muscles work, to say if you take this amount you'll get this much improvement in performance. But, and this is a lovely but for a psychologist, beliefs and self-confidence have a huge role to play. My colleague Chris Beattie studied the placebo effect, which is a slightly negative way of looking at beliefs, but in science that is the term which is used to describe beliefs, using a really clever design, clever in my mind, and that is probably not too hard. They had a treatment v placebo, so that might be caffeine or beetroot juice, versus something that looks like caffeine, looks like beetroot juice, but is actually neutral. It should have no biological effect. They looked at belief. So some people thought this is going to work. Wow, yeah, give me the L-carnitine as back in the 1990s. Would leap at the chance of taking L-carnitine and be quickly accepting of the idea that it would work, against the negative belief, the sort of Victor Meldrew type of running, I think, which I am morphing into. This won't work, I'm not going to take this. It's very important to have those clear distinctions, because they're all about how this is going to work. So what was found? They found that positive beliefs mirror the biological beliefs. If you believed that your substance was going to work, it tended to work. Not as effective as if you got the real treatment, but if you were given a placebo and you thought it was the real treatment and you believed the real treatment would work, you got an ergogenic effect. That meant you went quicker. So believing in the product you're going to take has an effect on making you go faster, even if there is actually no effect whatsoever. And that would explain why many of these products work in the short term but not in the long term. So you select a product such as beetroot juice. You take a load of beetroot juice, in it goes, out it goes, staining everywhere, amusing a few toilet trips, you do a couple of races, you go a bit quicker. Your belief that beetroot juice works is confirmed. Fabulous. And that is fabulous, because you've gone faster and you've increased your confidence to go faster by taking that substance. That is great, but you need to be sure of what the mechanisms are in order to be confident that that will work. One of those mechanisms is increased confidence, but you need to test whether there's a physiological one as well. So what I suggest you do is you do your own study. You need to be scientific in this approach and take the substance 10 times, preferably more, but certainly no fewer, because there will be performances when your performance will be poor for lots of other reasons. It might be bad weather, might be someone got you in the way. There are just a multiple number of reasons that could influence your performance. Stress at work the previous day, we could continue going on. So you want to know what your baseline performance is. Following your normal training program, has there been an improvement? You then conduct the experiment by trialing the treatment, and then you test whether there's a differences by recording the time. So you need the same sort of course. I think park runs make this perfectly for many people, because it's 5k on the same course over time, and if you've done lots of park run, you could look at your times over the previous 30 or 40 runs, so it creates a natural control condition, if you want. But be scientific in it. Don't be duped into believing that you've taken something that actually works when the real reason is psychological, because we could build your confidence to perform better, to push through harder without having to take the treatment. We could work on the sort of self-talk about managing sensations of effort, talk about trying to increase emotions that liberate energy, all done without taking the treatment. But if you're running a marathon and you know in a marathon there's going to be a physiological point where energy levels are low and you want to put more energy in, then practice what you're going to do on the day. And so in summary, psychological factors have a huge role in your perception whether you have enough energy. Emotions influence many factors, and gaining control over emotions or understanding what your emotions are saying is hugely important. If you take products to go faster, then believe in them, but test them. Learn what works for you, but do this systematically. I hope you've enjoyed this talk. Oh my God, that's a fabulous book! I don't believe it. I love to buy that book. I love it. Where's my? I'm going to buy that right now. Okay, thank you very much.